Laura sat alone in her quiet living room, surrounded by memories she could not escape. It had been 2 years since her husband Mark passed away. Yet the house still carried his presence, the smell of his old coffee mug, his favorite chair by the window, the pictures of them smiling through better times. She lived in a silence that had become too familiar, too heavy. Every evening, loneliness wrapped around her like a blanket she couldn't shake off. When her stepson Ethan returned home for the summer, everything shifted slightly. The house felt alive again, though Laura would never say it out loud. Ethan had grown into a kind, thoughtful young man of 25. He was taller than she remembered, his voice deeper, his manner calm and respectful. He helped her with the garden, fixed the leaky sink, and made her laugh in small, unexpected moments. It reminded her of what warmth felt like. Still, she carried guilt for even noticing such things. He was her stepson, after all a connection, bound by love and loss. Not by blood, but by shared grief. One evening, after they spent hours trimming roses in the backyard, Laura stretched her arms and winced. "My back's been killing me lately," she murmured, rubbing her shoulders. Ethan looked over with a concerned expression. "You should really take it easy," he said, then smiled. "I took a basic massage therapy course at the gym last semester." "Want me to help?" Laura blinked, caught off guard. "Oh no, Ethan, I couldn't ask you to do that." He shrugged casually. "It's no big deal. I just don't like seeing you in pain." His tone was so genuine, so purely kind, that she found herself hesitating. It wasn't something she would have accepted from anyone else. But Ethan wasn't just anyone. He was family. He had always treated her with care, even after his father's passing. "All right," she said softly, her voice uncertain. "Just nothing too fancy, okay?" Ethan chuckled, a gentle sound that filled the quiet house. "Got it. I'll keep it professional, I promise." Laura sat on the couch, nervous for reasons she couldn't explain. As Ethan began to work on her shoulders, she was surprised at how natural it felt. His hands were steady and respectful, pressing lightly into the tension in her muscles. The warmth from his touch spread through her back, easing away months of stiffness. She exhaled, her eyes closing as she let the comfort wash over her. "You've got magic hands," Shay said with a small laugh. Ethan grinned. "Guess that class paid off after all?" They both laughed. And for the first time in a long time, Laura felt a sense of peace she hadn't known she needed. There was no awkwardness, no wrongness, just kindness and care. For a moment, the walls of grief she'd built up around herself cracked, and through them came the faint light of human warmth. As Ethan continued, the air grew quiet again, but this silence wasn't heavy like before, it was calm. Then his voice came softly, almost as if he was speaking to her heart rather than her ears. "You've carried a lot, haven't you?" The words caught Laura off guard. She opened her eyes and looked at him, wondering if he meant her back or her life. His expression was gentle, sincere. He wasn't teasing or pitying her. He was seeing her. Truly seeing her. Her throat tightened. For months, people had told her to stay strong, to move on. But no one had ever simply acknowledged how much she had endured. Hearing it now in that quiet room made something inside her tremble. "I guess I have," she whispered. "It's just hard to let go of the past sometimes." Ethan paused, his hands still on her shoulders. "You don't have to let go, Laura. You just have to stop letting it hurt you." The simplicity of his words pierced through her like light through fog. She tried to hold back tears, but one slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. "I didn't mean to make you cry," he said gently. She smiled faintly, wiping her face. "No, it's not that. It's just, no one's ever said something like that to me before." He smiled back. "Then maybe they should have." For a long moment, neither spoke. The sound of the clock ticking filled the room, steady and slow. Laura felt her heart settle into a rhythm she hadn't felt in years, calm, steady, alive. When the massage ended, she turned to thank him, but words didn't come easily. There was something about his kindness, his quiet understanding, that stirred something deep in her chest, a mix of gratitude, sadness, and something she didn't want to name. "Thank you." "Ethan," she finally said, her voice soft but full of emotion. "You have no idea how much this means." He nodded, his eyes warm. "Any time, Laura. Really?" As he stood up and left the room, Laura sat there, staring at the empty space he left behind. The warmth on her shoulders still lingered. But it wasn't just from the massage, it was from the connection that had sparked between them. It wasn't romantic or wrong. It was human, raw, and filled with understanding. That night, Laura lay in bed, her mind spinning. For the first time in months, she didn't think about her loss or her loneliness. She thought about Ethan's words. She thought about the compassion in his voice and the sincerity in his eyes. Something had shifted between them, not something she planned or wanted, but something real. She realized she hadn't truly talked to anyone in a long time, not about her pain, not about her guilt, not about her fear of moving on. Yet somehow, with one simple gesture, Ethan had broken through walls she didn't know how to lower. It wasn't about love or attraction, it was about being seen, being cared for, being reminded that she was still alive, still deserving of warmth and comfort. As she drifted to sleep, she thought of how strange life could be, how the smallest things, a shared laugh, a kind gesture, a gentle touch, could change everything. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or how things might feel between them after this. But she knew one thing for sure. That moment on the couch had opened something inside her that had long been locked away. And though she didn't realize it yet, that night would mark the beginning of something unexpected, a quiet journey of healing that would challenge her heart and test the boundaries of what she thought she knew about love, family, and second chances. What Ethan had done was simple, just a massage, just a moment of kindness. But what it stirred inside her was powerful. It was the reminder that even broken hearts can feel again. And deep down, Laura knew that something had changed forever. What she didn't know yet was that this small act, the gentle care of a young man trying to help someone he loved, would soon lead to a confession that would leave her speechless. The next morning, Laura woke up earlier than usual. Sunlight spilled through her bedroom curtains, but her mind was clouded with thoughts of the night before. The quiet moment she'd shared with Ethan replayed again and again. His words, soft, honest, caring, had touched something deep inside her. It wasn't about attraction or confusion. It was about warmth, about finally being seen after years of silence. But still, she felt uneasy. Would things be awkward now? Would he regret what happened? When she came downstairs, Ethan was already in the kitchen making coffee. He looked up and smiled, though his eyes seemed cautious. "Morning," he said gently. "Morning," she replied, forcing a small smile. For a few minutes they moved around each other quietly. The sound of the coffee maker filled the silence. It wasn't uncomfortable, just different. Laura could sense that they were both thinking about the same thing. Coney neither knew how to start that conversation. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "About last night." He began, rubbing the back of his neck. Laura quickly interrupted. "It's okay, Ethan. You didn't do anything wrong." He looked relieved, but still uncertain. "I just wanted to make sure you didn't feel uncomfortable." "I didn't," she said softly. "Actually, it helped, more than you know." He nodded, the tension easing from his shoulders. "Good. I'm glad." They smiled at each other, and in that small moment, the awkwardness faded a little. But beneath the surface, emotions were stirring, emotions both of them were trying to understand. Later that afternoon, Laura decided to take a walk by the lake. It was a place she often went when she needed to think. The gentle sound of water and the rustle of trees always brought her calm. As she reached the path, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to see Ethan jogging toward her, hands in his pockets, hair ruffled by the wind. "Mind if I join?" he asked. "Not at all," she said, smiling faintly. They walked side by side, neither saying much at first. The silence between them felt calm this time, like two souls quietly sorting through their thoughts. Finally, Ethan spoke. "I didn't mean to make things heavy last night. I just didn't like seeing you hurting." Laura looked at him. "You didn't make things heavy, Ethan. You reminded me that someone still cares." He glanced at her, his eyes soft. "You've done a lot for me, Laura. More than anyone since Dad passed. I don't think I've ever really thanked you." She felt her chest tighten at his words. "You don't need to thank me," she said. "Your family." He smiled, though there was something behind it, something unspoken. "Still, I should have said it a long time ago. You kept this house alive when it felt like everything had fallen apart. You kept me together too." His words hit her deeper than she expected. She stopped walking for a moment and looked out over the lake. The sun shimmered across the water, and she felt tears sting her eyes. "You were a kid when everything happened," she said softly. "It wasn't your job to hold things together. That was mine." He stepped closer, his voice low and gentle. "But you did it for both of us, and I never forgot that." Something inside Laura trembled. For so long she had felt invisible, like life had moved on without her. But hearing him speak that way, with such honesty, made her realize she had mattered all along. They walked again, slower now. For a while, neither spoke. Then Ethan said something that made Laura's heart skip. "Can I tell you something personal?" She nodded, uncertain but curious. He took a deep breath. "When I came home this summer, I thought I was just coming back to help you out to fix the house, to keep you company. But being here again, it reminded me how much I missed feeling connected to someone. You've always been that person, Laura. You make this place feel like home again." His voice trembled slightly on the last words. Laura turned to look at him, stunned. She wasn't sure what to say. It wasn't a declaration of love, not really, but it wasn't simple gratitude either. It was something in between. Something complicated, heartfelt, and undeniably human. "Ethan," she said carefully, "you're being very kind. But I don't want you to say something you might regret later." He shook his head. "I don't regret it. I just wanted you to know that you're not alone. You never were." The sincerity in his voice left her speechless. She looked down at the ground, trying to steady her emotions. The past 2 years had been filled with so much emptiness that hearing someone say she wasn't alone almost felt like a miracle. They walked back to the house in silence. When they reached the porch, Laura turned to him. "Thank you, Ethan," she said softly, "for saying that." He gave a small smile, his eyes warm. "You don't have to thank me. I just said what's true." That night, the quiet in the house felt different. It wasn't the silence of loss anymore, it was the stillness of something about to change. Laura sat on the sofa, thinking about everything he'd said. She couldn't deny how deeply his words had touched her. But she was also aware of the line between them, a line built by family, respect, and shared grief. She didn't know what Ethan meant by his confession. Maybe it was simply affection and care. Maybe it was a deeper longing neither of them could name. Whatever it was, she knew it came from a good heart. Ethan had always been that kind of person, thoughtful, loyal, honest, as she stared out the window. Watching the moonlight touch the garden, she realized she hadn't felt this alive in years. Not because of romance, but because someone had reminded her that she still mattered upstairs. Ethan sat at his desk, staring at a blank page in his notebook. He hadn't meant for the conversation to get so emotional, but it had. Seeing Laura's pain had awakened something protective inside him. He admired her strength, her patience, her quiet resilience. She had been there for him when his father passed, comforting him even while she was breaking inside. He wanted to make her happy again, not because of love, but because she deserved peace. Yet deep inside, a small part of him wondered if his feelings were changing into something he shouldn't feel. He shook the thought away. No, he told himself, it was just care. Nothing more. "Downstairs," Laura whispered to herself. "You're not alone anymore." The same words Ethan had said now echoed in her heart. She knew things were shifting, and she didn't know where it would lead. But she also knew one thing for certain. Something had awakened in both of them. A fragile, emotional bond that neither could fully define. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't wrong. It was simply two lonely souls finding comfort in understanding each other again. And though neither said it out loud, They both felt the same quiet truth settling over them that night something had changed forever. Little did Laura know, this connection would soon lead to something unexpected. Something written on a piece of paper that would reveal Ethan's deepest feelings. Leave her? Completely speechless. The next few days passed quietly, but the air in the house felt different. Laura noticed Ethan becoming more reserved. He still helped with the chores, still smiled at her during breakfast. But there was a new kind of distance in his eyes, as if he was keeping something to himself. She didn't know what it was, but she felt it every time he looked away. Too quickly or changed the subject when their conversations got personal. Laura tried to ignore it, convincing herself it was just her imagination. Maybe he was busy thinking about his future or his job search. Maybe the emotional talk by the lake had stirred feelings he didn't know how to process. She didn't want to assume anything. Still, the uncertainty made her uneasy. One rainy afternoon, while Ethan was out getting groceries, Laura decided to clean the study room he used. It was something she did from time to time, organizing papers, dusting shelves, trying to keep the space tidy for him. As she arranged the books on his desk, she noticed an open notebook. A folded piece of paper rested between its pages, with her name written neatly on the front. Laura, daughter, heart skipped. For a moment, she thought about leaving it alone. She didn't want to invade his privacy. But the careful handwriting and the quiet weight of her name on that paper drew her in. Slowly, she unfolded it. Her hands trembled as she began to read. Laura, I don't know if I should be writing this, but I have to get these thoughts out somewhere. You've been my family for so long, but lately, I've felt something growing inside me that I can't ignore. You've always been kind, patient, and strong. When I lost Dad, I thought I'd never feel safe again, but you were there. You made home feel like home again. I don't mean to confuse you or make things hard, but I care about you more than I should. I don't want to cross any lines. I just need you to know that you've changed me. You made me want to be better. You made me believe in love again. Laura froze. Her fingers tightened around the letter, and she could feel her heart pounding in her chest. The words didn't feel wrong, but they were heavy, filled with emotion she hadn't expected. She sat down slowly, reading the lines again, trying to understand them. He wasn't confessing something improper. He was expressing gratitude, deep affection, and maybe confusion about his own feelings. But even so, it left her shaken. Ethan was her stepson, someone she'd helped raise. And yet his words carried something too intimate to ignore. She felt warmth and sadness all at once. Warmth because his words were honest and kind. Sadness because she knew this could never become anything more. She didn't blame him. Life after loss could blur emotions, turning affection into something deeper without either person realizing it. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Ethan's letter, about the pain and sincerity behind each word. She thought about how lonely both of them had been since Mark's death. Maybe this was what grief did. It made people reach for warmth wherever they could find it. When morning came, Laura knew she couldn't pretend she hadn't seen it. Hiding it would only make things worse. She had to talk to him. When Ethan came downstairs for coffee, she waited until he sat down. "Ethan," she said quietly, "I found something in your study yesterday." He froze. "You did?" She nodded. "Your letter." His face went pale. He looked down, embarrassed. "I didn't mean for you to see that," he said quickly. "It wasn't supposed to be read. It was just a way for me to clear my head." "I understand," Laura said softly, "but I think we should talk about it." He looked like he wanted to disappear. "I never meant to make you uncomfortable, Laura. Those feelings came out of nowhere. I know it's not right. I just didn't know what to do with them." Her voice trembled, but she kept it gentle. "Ethan, you didn't do anything wrong. You're human. You've been through so much, and so have I. Sometimes pain makes us reach out to the people who make us feel safe." He looked up at her then, his eyes filled with emotion. "You were the only one who ever made me feel understood. I didn't mean to cross any lines, I swear. I just wanted you to know how much you mean to me." Tears filled Laura's eyes. She could see the sincerity in his face, the mix of confusion and tenderness that only someone struggling with their heart could have. "Ethan," she whispered, "I care about you deeply too. You've been my family, my comfort. But what you're feeling, it's not love in the way you think it is. It's something different. Something born from shared loss." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I know. I just needed to say it out loud. Keeping it inside was tearing me apart." Laura reached across the table and took his hand gently. "You don't have to hide your feelings. I'd rather you be honest than carry them alone. But we both know we can't let this turn into something that hurts us." Ethan squeezed her hand, his voice breaking. "I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted to help you heal." Her tears fell silently. "And you did, Ethan. You helped me more than you know." They sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of truth hanging between them. No one moved. No one spoke. There was no anger, only understanding. The kind that comes when two hearts finally face what's been unspoken. Finally, Ethan stood, his voice quiet. "I'm sorry, Laura. I'll give you some space. I think I just need to clear my head for a few days." She wanted to tell him not to go, but she also knew he needed distance. "Okay," she said softly. "Just promise me you'll be kind to yourself." He nodded, gave her a small, sad smile, and walked toward the door. When the door closed behind him, the silence returned, but this time it didn't feel lonely. It felt real, like the calm after a storm. Laura sat there, her heart heavy but grateful. Ethan's letter had opened a wound, but it had also revealed something beautiful to people who had carried each other through loss, now finding the strength to stand on their own. That evening, Laura folded the letter carefully and placed it in a box of keepsakes next to an old photo of Mark and Ethan smiling together. She whispered, "He turned out just like you, kind and full of heart." For the first time in a long while, she felt peace. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew their bond would survive. Maybe not as it was before, but as something even stronger built on truth, compassion, and the courage to face their emotions honestly. That night, as she watched the rain fall softly outside her window, she realized that Ethan's letter wasn't a confession of love, it was a message of healing. And though the words had startled her, they also reminded her that love, in any form, is never something to fear. Little did she know Ethan wasn't gone for long. He would soon return with something in his hands that would change everything again, not through words this time, but through a gesture, so kind and selfless that it would leave her completely speechless. The days following Ethan's letter were quiet but charged, with a subtle tension that neither Laura nor Ethan tried to explain. Their interactions were careful, gentle, yet filled with unspoken emotion. Laura found herself watching him more closely than before, noticing the small ways he helped around the house, the way he moved quietly when she was reading, the way his laughter still carried the warmth that had always comforted her. She couldn't ignore the feelings stirred by the letter, though she reminded herself that nothing improper had happened, just an honest expression of care. One late afternoon, Laura found herself in the garden, a warm golden light spilling over the flower beds. She loved this time of day, when the air was still, and the house felt like a soft sanctuary. She sank into the garden chair, thinking about the past few months. How strange it was that someone she had known for so long could surprise her in ways she never expected. Ethan had grown from the boy she had raised into a young man, and yet in the same gesture-simple kind, heartfelt, he reminded her that life could still bring unexpected warmth. Ethan appeared quietly at the edge of the garden path, holding a small, neatly wrapped box. Laura looked up, surprised. "What's that?" she asked, her voice soft. "Just open it," he said, with a faint, nervous smile. His tone was gentle, almost hesitant, as if he was worried about her reaction. Laura reached for the box, unwrapping it carefully. Inside was a photo frame. She lifted it and saw an old picture of herself, Ethan and Mark, taken years ago in the backyard. The three of them smiling, caught in a moment of pure happiness. Her heart skipped. Beneath the photo, Ethan had carefully attached a note. She read it quietly, for the woman who kept our family's heart beating. Her hands trembled as she held the frame. The memory of that day, the laughter, the sunlight, and Mark's wide smile came rushing back. Laura's eyes filled with tears, not sadness, but an overwhelming sense of appreciation. He had remembered, he had honored those moments, and he had connected them to her in a thoughtful, meaningful way. Ethan watched her closely, his expression gentle. "I wanted you to have it," he said quietly, "to remind you that you're loved, always." Laura felt speechless. He hadn't crossed any boundaries, he hadn't asked for anything in return. And yet his gesture carried the weight of understanding, affection, and respect. She realized in that moment that Ethan's letter, his words, and now this gift were not about romance, they were about emotional honesty, appreciation, and deep care. She reached across the table and took his hand, her voice trembling. "Ethan, this is beautiful. You didn't have to do this. I wanted to," he replied softly. "I know the past few years have been hard. I just wanted to show you that it mattered. You matter." Laura smiled through the tears, feeling her heart swell. It was the simple things that struck the hardest: kindness, thoughtfulness, gestures that reminded her she was seen, appreciated, and never truly alone. For 2 years, she had carried her grief silently. But Ethan had reminded her that even in loss, love and connection could exist in forms she had forgotten. They sat together in the garden, the sun dipping toward the horizon. No words were needed. The silence was filled with a kind of comfort that comes when two people understand each other completely without speaking. The letter, the words. And now the gift had built a bridge over loneliness and grief. Laura realized that the bond between her and Ethan, had transformed. It wasn't romantic love. It wasn't desire, it was something just as powerful. Emotional intimacy, shared understanding, and mutual respect. She had spent years fearing loneliness, and now she could see clearly that family could be more than a duty. It could be a source of strength and warmth. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "I don't know what the future holds, Laura," he said quietly, "but I want you to know that I'll always be here. No matter what." Her voice trembled as she replied, "And I'll always be here for you too. You've reminded me how it feels to be truly cared for. That's a gift more precious than anything else." For the first time in months, Laura felt truly at peace. The past was honored, the present was warm, and the future seemed a little lighter. She realized that healing wasn't about erasing loss, it was about finding people who could help carry it with her, who could help her breathe again when the weight seemed too heavy. Ethan didn't leave her alone that night. They watched the sunset together, sharing small stories of the past, laughing softly at memories, and enjoying the quiet rhythm of companionship. There was no awkwardness, no expectation, only understanding, support, and care. The gesture of the photo frame, small yet deeply meaningful, had said what words could not. It told her that she mattered, that her efforts had not gone unnoticed, and that someone cared deeply about her well-being. It was thoughtful, sincere, pure, exactly the kind of connection that had been missing in her life. Laura looked at Ethan, noting how much he had grown, not just in age, but in character. He had learned patience, empathy, and sensitivity, the kind of qualities that could make a difference in someone's life, just as he had made a difference in hers. She realized that the letter, the conversations, and now this gift were all part of the same story. Two people finding healing together, learning to navigate grief, and discovering the power of care and kindness as the night fell. Laura placed the photo frame on the mantel where it caught the soft glow of the lamp. It was more than a gift, it was a symbol of gratitude, connection, and emotional honesty. She whispered quietly, "Thank you, Ethan, for everything." Ethan smiled softly, standing a little taller, proud not of recognition, but of the simple fact that he had helped someone he cared for feel valued and loved. And Laura understood in that quiet moment that what had left her speechless was not the gift itself, but the thought, respect, and heart behind it. It was a reminder that relationships are built not on grand gestures, but on small acts of care, understanding, and honesty. It was a lesson in healing, in connection, and in love that is pure and respectful. That evening, Laura went to bed with a calm heart. The sadness she had carried for years didn't vanish, but it softened. She no longer felt alone. Ethan's presence, his thoughtfulness, and his sincerity had rekindled her hope not for romance, but for trust, warmth, and the quiet strength that comes from being truly seen. The bond between them had changed forever, built on respect, honesty, and care. It wasn't about crossing boundaries. It was about sharing humanity. And in that quiet, tender moment, Laura realized that what Ethan had done next, this simple, heartfelt gesture, was the kind of love and respect that words alone could never express. The story wasn't about romance. It was about healing, family, and emotional intimacy. And in the warmth of that garden, with the sunset fading and the frame glowing gently in her hands, Laura felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: complete, quiet peace.